Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Miss Melody Murray. Melody is a licensed marriage and family therapist and child mental health specialist in private practice. She serves clients that age ranges from 14 to 75, managing things like ADHD, trauma, depression, boundary and family of origin issues, as well as adults with childhood trauma. She is the author of Mourning the Living When the Loved One You've Lost Is Still Here and My Bounce Back Plan. She is a former hospital ER mental health evaluator. She has been featured on The Today Show, New York Times, The Washington Post, The Business Insider, The Doctors, E! Network. So, Melody, you have quite a resume and a very successful author, and I know we're going to get into a lot of things today, but thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
So it is so awesome to have someone of your stature to kind of come on here and talk about not only the things that you have experienced in your own life, but the things that you've seen in clients and different patients and things that you've worked with, especially under these different mental health arenas. So I'm very anxious to hear more about you, about your story, and about, the different types of people and things that you work with. And I just hope that, your expertise can provide the audience a lot of places to go with the trauma that they seek. So first of all, did I leave anything out, or is there anything else you'd like to add about yourself that maybe I forgot to mention?
Yeah, I've done a lot of different things, and I think that it sounds strange. I feel that a lot of people feel really bad, or they feel that they're living their lives at a deficit due to the trauma that they've experienced. But I disagree with that stance. I believe that there are so many amazing gifts that you can that you can run with based on the trauma that you've survived. And I think that's if my life means anything, that's the thing that I want it to mean, is that just because you've been through a lot of crap doesn't mean that you are ineligible from living a successful life and being healed and having fun and love and being happy. There's a lot of things that we acquire, a lot of skills that we acquire based on the tough things that we've been able to get through.
That's so beautiful. And I think sometimes people, they have a misperception of the trauma and things that they've been through, in the sense of they feel like it puts them at a deficit, when in reality, if we perceive it correctly, it can put us in a very good place of strength and resilience, and teach us things if we take that thing and learn from it. Now, I know not all traumas are created equally. So we take that with a grain of salt, because there are obviously traumas that, people really have a hard time grasping and getting over, which I'm sure you've seen in your practice and in your work. So I'm eager to learn more about the different types of things that you've seen and you've worked with. But why don't you start a little bit by kind of sharing your story, which has been the crux of the book that this new book that you have that's coming out, right?
Yeah. So there are two books that I'm really, really proud about that I've written. The first is called Mourning the Living When the Loved One You've Lost Is Still Here. And when I mentioned that to my publisher for the very first time, when I said that title to my publisher for the very first time, she gasped and then she burst into tears. And I thought, wow, where's this coming from? And she said that she'd said those words, mourning the living, regarding her ex-husband the month prior to us meeting. And I think it's a really important thing to understand that, you can love someone from a distance, and you can, really mourn and grieve a relationship that you hoped was one way, but unfortunately is a completely different way. I wrote the book based on my relationship with my older sister, who, as we were growing up, she was my main protector from my mother, from our stepfather. We had a very chaotic childhood. There was substance abuse and physical abuse and sexual abuse, like every, emotional neglect, like every horrible thing you could imagine a child getting through or living in is what we were living in. And she tried to protect me in that environment. And then as we grew up and became adults, my sister became a drug addict in her 40s, which is something you never really think about. You hear about people doing that in their teens and 20s, but this is a woman who had a career and had relationships and children. And then just, I feel like, faced the, camel, what do they say? The straw that broke the camel's back. I believe that that's what my sister experienced. And I had to shift what our relationship meant in my world in order to accommodate who she was, who she became, because I needed to protect myself from her when she was the person that protected me from others. And it's such a mind trip. And as I was writing the book, I realized, like, I had done that with our mother. I did that with our father. And, the chapters in the book are all connected to different relationship dynamics. There's a chapter about mothers, about fathers, about partners, siblings, friends, ourselves even, and how as life progresses, we need to edit our relationships. We need to adjust how we interact with people that we were once close to, that we may not be, due to our growth or another person's growth or lack thereof. So that's what the book is about. And it's a very necessary thing to be honest with yourself about that. We evolve if we're lucky. Growing and evolution, those are luxuries. And not a lot of people have it as a goal to grow and evolve in their lives. Some people are very content with things just staying the way that they are. And if you're a person with a growth mindset and you want to understand yourself more and you want to grow and evolve, and you realize the people that you love and the people that are around you don't have that goal in mind, it's very disappointing, and it can cause a lot of frustration and anger, because you realize that there are certain people that are very comfortable with the status quo. And if that's not who you are, that can shift you into a lonely space, because you are growing and you realize people that you love have zero desire to do the same thing.
That is so powerful. Like everything that you're saying, and these are things that I've considered myself as I've been on a growth journey for the past, I don't know, 5 years or so. And just getting to that place of realization that, some places that God calls us to, not everybody is supposed to go with us to those places. And I've thought this through, like, in the sense that it's not necessarily that, sometimes it is necessarily that you're 10 steps ahead and this person just doesn't want to grow. But then other times it's this idea of, I'm growing in this direction and you're growing in this direction. It doesn't make it bad, but where I'm going, you can't go, and where you're going, I can't go. And getting to a place of contentment with that is difficult. Which,
Yeah.
when I first heard the title of your book, I thought it I thought it was predominantly meant that it's grieving someone that is here, but you have to sever that relationship. But what I'm hearing you say too is it's not just that, but it's also the idea of being with someone, maybe not having to fully sever the relationship, but just mourning the idea of not being as close to that person or not having as deep of a relationship having to release them and them having to release you. We address both of those things in the book.
True. You really nailed it. It's true. Sometimes sometimes you do have to sever a relationship in order to protect yourself from someone who has a history of harming you. Sometimes you absolutely need to cut that person off. And so that is addressed in the book. And how do you do that? And how do you deal with all the emotions connected with that when you have been told or taught or even groomed towards loving this person? The flip side of that is that, with certain relationships, maybe you can negotiate them. Maybe you can, talk it through and decide, how do we interact with each other? How do we coexist so that you feel respected? I feel respected. And we will do what we need to do in order for us to connect with each other. But unfortunately, some relationships aren't at that level. You have to understand when you're feeling respected and when you're not. And that's what the book calls for. It calls for strict honesty. Like, you have to be honest with yourself. This is not about a delusional or denial, state of mind. This book calls for you to be completely honest with who you are and who you are in the lives of the people that are around you, that you're questioning your connection to them. You have to be honest with yourself, because when you're honest about how you interact with someone, how someone interacts with you, when you're truly honest, that the beautiful part of that is it shifts you into problem solving mode. It helps you decide and figure out how you feel and how you should move forward. But if you're in denial about how you interact with someone, if someone loves you, if they don't love you, if you're in denial of the truth of that dynamic, you're always going to be in a state of confusion. You're always going to be in this space of wanting more, or being in this space of not knowing exactly where you stand, because you're choosing to look at the relationship from your inner child. That inner child, that younger self, and the younger self is where our big traumas occur, and that determines who we are in our adult life. And so in that headspace, it's a really powerful space to be in, that a lot of people don't want to go to, because they're afraid, they're scared. There are a variety of reasons why people don't want to go back to their childhood space. But you need to go to that childhood space, because that childhood space, and who raised you, who groomed you, who poured into you, whether they're healthy or not, that determines who you're going to be in your adult relationships with yourself, and with coworkers, with bosses, and with, lovers. That decides who you're going to be and what your expectations are. And so you do have to go into the past to decide, to really see, who am I? What do I expect? What do I want? What do I need? And I think that's the thing when it comes to therapy. There are so many people that are like, oh, you can't change the past. What's the point in going back to the past? Well, that's the big point right there. Who you are right here, right now, whether you're 23, 33, 63, or 83, is based on those early relationships, and who poured into you, and how healthy or unhealthy were those people in the times that they poured into you.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say is that there is freedom in diving back into that childhood hurt, the childhood trauma, hurts, pains, things that we've dealt with in our childhood. There's freedom there.
Well, there's so many unanswered questions that come from that. And I think freedom is something that happens a little down the line. Validation is what comes first. Validation, and we need to validate ourselves. And I think a lot of times people assume that you have to have an apology from certain people. You have to have these hardcore, direct confrontations with people that have harmed you. But number one, that's not always, possible, because some people die, or some people just move away, or you don't have access to some people.
Mhm.
Sometimes number two is that the people that you want validation from, you want apologies from, they're not mature enough to give it to you. And so to sit and wait and hope that, these people that hurt you will have this light bulb moment and be sorry and say these really sincere apologies to you. Stop. Let that crap go, because you're just going to get disappointed. So, it's important for us to go backwards so that we can really own up to who raised us, where they were at in their own healing journey. And some people, they're not at, like I said at the very beginning, healing is not a goal for a lot of people. And when you decide to heal, when you've made that decision that I am going to work through the stuff that I know bothers me, that harms me, I make decisions that don't come from a really healthy place. When you make that decision and you're really like intentional about healing yourself, you truly do realize there are a lot of people around you who do not give a shit about being healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really hard place to be, but it's a necessary place to be so that you can be understanding of people's capabilities, so that you're not expecting something from someone that they aren't capable of giving to you. You have to be honest and you have to be truthful. And it's a very hard place. So freedom comes from that, but freedom is a long-term goal. But it's a necessary goal to get you through those difficult and awkward moments.
So, what would you recommend to someone? Like, say that they know that there's this situation where they want an apology, but there's not an apology and it's not going to happen. Or they get to the place where they see that this person is just, like you said, not mature enough to give them the apology. What are some practical tips that you would tell someone in order to kind of navigate through that time? Because it's hard. Is it more mindset, or what would you recommend to someone going through that?
It's very much mindset. It really, really is. And again, it calls for you to be really honest with yourself, and honest with yourself about the people that are around you. I feel that when we get hurt by someone, when someone harms us, most people who are harming other people have zero idea that their behavior is harming someone else. They just don't get it. Because I think that if people understood how much their behavior was harming other people, there would be less harm. But we all know that there's a lot of harm that's out there. And so we have to be really honest with ourselves so that we can heal ourselves and understand that we don't need that harmful person, that emotionally immature person, to validate us so that we can say, yes, I have been harmed, and now I'm going to work towards healing myself. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that harm us are very immature. And so for you to sit in a space and hope and cross your fingers that they will have this big revelation, a big light bulb moment, that they need to come to you and apologize to you for the things that they've done to you, don't hold your breath. That's unrealistic. And that is your immature inner child hoping for something that isn't possible. And it's also putting you in a position where you're on pause, waiting for someone who isn't that mature to give you this permission to move forward with the rest of your life. Stop. And so that's where there's a lot of grief that comes from that moment. And that's where the mourning is. Well, you really have to mourn that people that hurt you were not really mature enough to understand the damage that they were doing. So you do need to acknowledge those things, and it's important to talk them out. Journaling is extremely helpful. Doing therapy is extremely helpful because you're getting things that are in your head. You're getting things that are in your head out of your head, so you can talk them through with someone that you respect, someone that respects you, and then you can really understand who is responsible for these things that happened. How do I think about these things that happened to me? Now, how do I feel about these things that have happened to me? Now, what do I notice that I have done when these thoughts and these emotions pop up in my life, when I'm triggered by the thoughts and the memories that I've experienced? What do I do when I get triggered? Now, when we get triggered by what's happening in front of us that is definitely connected to the past, but it's not what we're seeing in front of us. We could be sitting behind the wheel of a car, heading to work, a place that we go to every day and have been for years, and you can still get triggered That's the point of going back into your past, because you're not getting triggered because you're at a traffic light on on Main Street. There's something about being on Main Street in your car, something you're seeing, something you're smelling, something you're touching, whatever. Triggers are connected to the five senses. Whatever's happening in that moment, if you have a big reaction to it, it's because it's tied to something in the past. That's why we need to lean into the things that we are triggered by. Now, when we're triggered, it's important for us to understand what triggers us, but not so that we can lean into them and be victims. A lot of people do that, where they're like, this triggers me and that triggers me, and why do you do these things, and that triggers me. No. Grow the hell up. Stop that. Your triggers are your responsibility. They're not anybody else's responsibility. Your triggers are your job to lean into and to dismantle them, so those things no longer stay as triggers in your life. They're not things that other people need to tiptoe around. That's you being a child, and that's you being a victim. Grow the hell up.
So what would you tell someone? Okay, so first of all, can you explain triggers? Because I try to explain this, but I always like to hear people's definition of really what you would consider a trigger, and especially for the audience that maybe doesn't know, or they're like, is that a trigger in my life? I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm. Triggers come in so many different forms. I had a client, she was a teen, and she was, she bore witness to a school shooting. There was a shooting that happened at her school, and anytime she heard any kind of loud pop, whether it was a car, a reaction from a car muffler or a slamming door, that loud, abrupt sound triggered a fearful response in her.
Mm-hmm.
And triggers can come in a lot of different forms. We can get triggered by a loud noise, a loud voice. We can get triggered by certain smells that take us back to a moment where we were harmed in the past. That's the key. There's something that has happened in your present moment that is taking you back to a past experience. It could be a sound, it could be a smell, it could be a touch, someone touching you on the shoulder, and you immediately go back to this like protective stance. Well, it may be connected to you being physically abused, sexually abused in your past, and maybe a shoulder touch was involved in that. And so it's important to pay attention to those moments, because whatever you're being triggered towards is something that you need to heal. You need to lean into it and you need to heal it, so that if you're watching a movie and someone talks about sexual assault, they talk about physical abuse or verbal abuse, you don't completely shut down and have to walk away from this moment. Because unfortunately, the way that our entertainment goes in this world, there's so many shocking things that happen in all the things that we watch, entertainment wise, that you're going to be triggered whether you want to admit it or not. You have to own that. And so our triggers are those things that shut us down. It's the feelings and it's the thoughts and it's the memories that shut us down. Now, it's important for us to understand what are the things that trigger us, so that we can heal those things. And it comes in a lot of different forms. And a lot of times we get triggered in ways that we don't even realize. As I was growing up, now, when I was a kid, I knew that I was in a really dysfunctional household with a very abusive mother. It took me several years and I'm 50 years old at this point, and there's still moments where I go, where did that come from? I thought I was done. I thought I had healed that. And oh my God, I'm here again. What the hell? And it's frustrating and it's infuriating, but it's still like, we are layered people and we will heal things at certain layers, but there are certain things that are very, very deep seated in us. And so we have to be patient with ourselves as we are uncovering all those things that bother us in our lives. So you can tell when there's just a moment happening versus you being triggered based on the magnitude of your reaction. If you just have a reaction, someone's lied to you and you're like, what the hell, you lied to me? That's not cool. That's a reaction that's completely fine. But if you are flipping tables and you're screaming and yelling and you're crying, you've been triggered because the proportion of your response to that moment is way bigger than that moment. Now, me saying that is not meant to gaslight you and say that you should have a smaller moment. That's not the point of this. The point is that when you realize that your reaction to a situation is way bigger than a situation, that means that that situation is just a piece of to be healed. You need to process it. You need to explore it. You need to cry about it. You need to be angry about it. You need to own what happened to you so then that thing stops having control over you.
That is so powerful, and that's one of the probably the best descriptions I've really heard of a trigger. I think you covered all points as far as what different things, because I know that people can feel something and know they're triggered. And then there's the times that we feel something and we blow up and we're like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to understand that both of those can be triggers. And I love what you said about being able to explore those things, because there's I think there's value, so much value in being able to feel. Like, that's part of the human experience, that we have the ability to feel. And feeling good and bad, like, that's almost like a protection mechanism when we're able to feel bad because we know that something's wrong. It's the same way in our health. If we
Mm-hmm.
know that there's pain, well, if you touch a hot stove, you know it's hot, so you're going to take your hands off. If you didn't feel the hot, you wouldn't know, and the damage would be astronomical. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's the same, and but I love the way you explain that, and I think that it's so valuable for people to understand that and know that, especially when they're looking at their own mental health, and especially for those, like you said in the beginning, that really want to grow. You want to grow, you want to heal. It's vital that you get in and you start taking apart, deconstructing some of these things that has happened, so that you know how to control them, how to handle them when they do pop up as triggers.
Well, I mean, being human is expressing our emotions and, more importantly, experiencing our emotions. Unfortunately, the way that our society has been formed, we're in a capitalist society where it's all about buying things in order to put band-aids on how we feel. We're all about buying things. You need to buy the car, you need to have the shoes, you got to have the purse, you need to live in a certain neighborhood in order for you not to feel. And it's that simple. Our society is very much into not feeling, when feeling is it's a primary human condition. Someone close to you has passed away. You need to feel that. You need to not brush it off. I had a young lady that I was working with. She was a teenager. Her grandfather had died, and her grandfather was the most important person in her life. And he died, and let's say we were having a conversation 2 or 3 months after he passed away, and she made this flippant conversation like, I know I should be over it by now. And I'm like, what the hell? No. You love this person. You can count on this person more than anybody else. What do you mean you're supposed to be over it in a couple of months? No. But the messages that she'd gotten from the people around her, which was, oh, let it go, suck it up, he's gone, he was old. And that's so wrong. Like, it doesn't honor the relationship that you had with each other. Like, you need to honor your grandfather with the tears. But tears are for people who are weak. No, tears are for human beings. Tears are for human beings. Tears honor your experience. But the way that our world is built now, it's like we're not supposed to honor anything. We're supposed to stay in these miserable states and use band-aids that are things in order for us to feel better. And we've got
Mhm.
to rebel against that messaging that says that you're not supposed to be a human being and you're not supposed to feel. When someone has harmed us, we need to feel when there's something that we wanted that we didn't get. We need to feel when the rug gets pulled out from under us. We need to feel those moments. Give ourselves that pause in order to feel those moments, so that as we are moving forward in our lives, we're making new decisions based on what we have felt, so that we don't, let's say it's a toxic relationship, we don't get into yet another toxic relationship.
Mhm.
That's why we have to feel. And that's what
Mhm.
the second book is about. The second book is called My Bounce Back Plan. And it is about healing from devastation so that you don't have to feel that you have to start from ground zero every single time something new has happened in life, because something different and something newly devastating is going to happen to you because you're alive and you're living on this planet. You're going to lose a job you didn't expect. You're going to get broken up with. You're going to be in a car wreck. You're going to have all these things that happen to you because you're a human being having a human experience. And you need to take the time to pause and feel it and
Mhm.
identify how you feel so then you can make new decisions if necessary, so that you're not in the same toxic job environment, so you don't get into the same dysfunctional relationship pattern. You have to take the pause. You don't just put a band-aid on it and date the same type of person or get in the same job all over again. You need to take a pause, assess how you feel, think new thoughts, challenge old ways of thinking so that you can feel better about where you are right now, so you can feel empowered. Get a crew of people that are also healing minded people. Get those people around you. Maybe edit the people that have been around you that are in a negative state of mind and move forward in a positive and healthy way. But this is a cause for you to be honest. You've
Mm.
got to be honest with yourself.
Girl, you're preaching today.
That's how I
I
roll,
mean,
Amber.
we're putting it down, but it's so true. And you said like buying things, materialism and things. It's also consumption. I see this so much with people that just they consume bad stuff, whether it be social media or video games or television or whatever. But it's
Alcohol,
like,
sex, drugs,
yes,
shopping, whatever.
yeah, and it's
Band-aids,
all a
all
band-aid.
band-aids.
Mhm. Yeah, it totally is, and I don't understand. I do not understand how someone and I just this is top of my mind, but how someone can get out of one relationship and immediately jump into another relationship because I'm like, how do you not take the time to heal the things and self-reflect of the things you did wrong, the things that they might have done wrong to you, the things that you attracted in this person that was not healthy? Like when you're not taking time to reflect these things, what what can you do with that?
But that's the world that we're living in right now. We're in a microwave world where we want to feel good all the time, but there's not a thought in that it takes work to feel joyful. And I'm all about the case against happy. I think happy and happiness, I think it's immature, it's childish. Being content, I think, should be the goal, because that's a more mature way of thinking, where it's like, that there are going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, but there you have more good days than you've got bad days. People bounce from relationship to relationship for a variety of reasons. When it comes to women are taught that you're and it's changing, but a lot of women are taught that you don't have value unless you're assigned to another human being, whether it's a romantic partner or it's a child. You don't have value unless you're a mother or you're a partner, and that's bullshit, and we all know it. We all know it, but that doesn't mean that there are a lot of people that still aren't living in that way. So if I don't have a boyfriend, then I've got to find another boyfriend, because that means that I have value, because someone outside of me says that I have value. And I think that's the key. It's like, you really need to understand that these outside things aren't supposed to validate you, and they're not supposed to soothe you either. Everything that we need is already inside ourselves.
Mhm.
We don't need anything external to help us feel better. But the way that our world is all about what's external, because that's what makes the people that are gazillionaires, it helps them stay gazillionaires. If we just focus on ourselves, if we breathe, if we go on walks, if we sleep, if we just take time to think, take time to cry, we will heal ourselves. But we've been taught that it's a very scary thing. But I think the most important lesson is when you understand those things that you're avoiding talking about and thinking about and crying about, You've already survived those things. You survived the event already. You talking about it isn't going to be harder than you surviving it. You talking about it is going to help you heal
Mm-hmm.
from that moment. But people don't even think about that. And that's the cognitive dissonance that people feel personally, where they think if I talk about this thing that's in the past, it's going to be so horrible, I can't handle it, without thinking you've already handled the horrible thing. You survived it. You experienced it. But people don't pause enough to give themselves the time to think that stuff through. They'd rather buy another pair of shoes, go to the next bar, have sex with the next person, start up the next relationship without pausing to realize that they've already got the tools to figure it out. You've already survived the thing that you're afraid of talking about.
Mm-hmm. And do you think people do this because they, like you said something earlier about they don't want to feel pain? And do you think that sometimes by thinking about that thing or ripping the band-aid off, I like to think of it as like there's a wound you have in your arm, and until you get all the infection out of there, it's just going to continue to hurt. But instead of ripping that band-aid off, you just keep trying to put another band-aid on it. Is that because they don't want to feel the pain?
It is. It is. And life is pain. There is absolutely nothing you can do to avoid pain. Zero. So grow the hell up. Seriously, grow the fuck up. There's nothing that you can do, nothing you can do in life to avoid pain. Now you get to choose what that pain looks like. Is that pain avoidance? Or is that pain authenticity? Avoidance is, I'm going to act like it doesn't bother me. I'm going to jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. I'm going to buy a new car every year. I'm going to move from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood. I'm going to force my kids into 10,000 activities to avoid lack, to avoid fear. Or am I going to just sit and go, wow, I can't believe my father molested me. My mother knew about it and she didn't do anything to protect me. Yeah, that's a hard conversation to have, but it's a necessary conversation to have. It's hard, but it's necessary. But you've already survived the abuse. But you need to talk about it. You need to think about it. And you need to put the right responsibility towards the rightful parties in order to protect yourself moving forward and protect your own children. But that takes maturity. The easiest thing is to just smile and nod and go to Christmas and allow your children to hang out with these people that harmed you because it looks good on the outside. That's
Yeah.
that's that's the fallacy of it. The authenticity is, no, I'm not doing this because I'm not going to keep perpetuating these painful things, these painful patterns. And we're taught that, if I call things out, if I have boundaries. I had a client say this to me the other day. The reason why she has neglected in creating boundaries with her family is she's afraid of being lonely. I said, honey, you're already lonely. You already don't want to hang out with these people. And when you do, you feel like crap after. You have all this in your mind about all the things that weren't said and all the things that haven't been done and all the things that were done that were harmful, and no one talks about it. It all just hangs just below the surface. So you're alone in those moments because you're holding it and you don't know if they are. You're already alone. In that spot that you dread, you're already in it. And so when it comes to those moments where we're looking for all these external things, shopping, sex, drugs, alcohol, we're looking for those external things to help us feel better. Here's the wake-up call. You already feel like shit before you pour that next drink. You're already uncomfortable. You already feel like crap. So you pouring the next drink isn't going to help you feel better. You already feel it. So just ride it. Just ride that wave. Be curious. Don't be judgmental. Don't think because you're feeling really, really rough right now for something that happened to you 10 minutes ago, 10 years ago, when you were 4, that doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you a human being. Something bad happened to you and you're feeling it. Feel it. Feel it now in your 50-year-old self because you didn't have anybody around you protecting you and helping you process it in your 5-year-old self. So do the honor now. Feel it now. And that's a very surprising thing that happens with a lot of clients that I work with. Most of the clients that I work with are adults that experienced trauma in their childhoods. And they will have moments where they're like, I just cried out of nowhere. I don't even know why. I was just at work and I just started crying. I was at the grocery store and I just started crying. I said, honey, you're crying right now for the 8-year-old self that couldn't cry because no one gave a shit when you were 8. But you feel safe now. And so therefore you're letting it out. You didn't feel safe back then. You knew you weren't safe and it's coming out now. And it's surprising to a lot of people that they don't realize that there are things that happened to you back then that are still in you right now.
Mhm.
At 35, at 45, at 65, it's still in you. The body keeps the score. Your body remembers everything that happened to you, specifically when you weren't taught how to process it back then. So it will come out in later years when you feel safe, when your brain says, she's ready. She's got resources. She's got the time. Here we go. You haven't messed up in any way. Your mind says she can handle it. Your mind says he's ready. And it'll come out, and it will come out as a surprise, but it's actually not a surprise. It's something you experienced that you just didn't have the space. You didn't have anybody holding space for you to do it when you really needed it.
Yeah, I think that is so good too. And I have experienced in my own personal journey that when I try to suppress something, it's going to come out eventually. It comes out some way eventually. So whether that be in a trigger or some toxic behavior or some blow up at someone that I love,
Or
or
cancer now, Amber,
yeah,
cancer.
yeah, yeah.
There are a
I
lot of diseases that are connected to suppression. There and specifically, let's talk about all of the autoimmune diseases that affect women exponentially more than it affects men. It's due to suppression of anger specifically. Because women are taught that you're supposed to be nice and you're supposed to be cute and you don't be a bitch and smile and have all and suppress your reality. What's that? That's all coming out as autoimmune diseases. All of these things that are really hard to diagnose and they're hard to pinpoint, it's because it's suppressed emotion. Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a guru of mine, his latest book is called The Myth of Normal. And he talks about that all these diseases that so many women get. And, there's a group of doctors, a part of the book, there's a group of doctors that are all talking about, oh, she's got this. Oh, she's a really nice person. Oh, she's got that disease. Yeah, she's a people pleaser. There's a bunch of diseases that are just connected to women that are suppressing all their emotions because they're people pleasers and they're autoimmune diseases. And men don't get diagnosed at the same level as women because men don't have the same pressure as women do to be nice and to be sweet and to be cute and to smile.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I agree with you too. Like the cancer and the autoimmune, everything is so interconnected from our hormones to our mindset to our bodies to our health, everything. It's so interconnected. And it's like we have to grow on all of those levels, on every level. We want to seek our best self on all of those levels. And, my thing is that in my experience, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I do know that for me, I have to acknowledge the trauma, the things that I've been through in my life and the pain that I've been through. It's like, let's acknowledge those things because by acknowledging them, I can reframe them. And when I start to reframe things and say, okay, this happened to me, that wasn't good, it wasn't ideal, but what can I take from this to make someone else's life better? Or what can I take from this to make my life better? Or what did I learn that I would have not otherwise had or experienced had I not gone through this thing? And I think by reframing, like it's a very powerful tool, but you have to sit in that pain to be able to reframe it, to be able to
You
change your
have to be
perception of
honest.
it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up. You have to be honest with yourself. And there is also a theory or a movement called post-traumatic growth. Have you heard about
I
post-traumatic
have.
growth?
Yes, I have.
And it's not something that a lot of people have heard of, but it's the truth. Post-traumatic growth is a movement that started in the 80s by a group of researchers back in, I think they were in the Midwest, and they did longitudinal studies on people that experienced natural disasters, war veterans, people that have been through really, really horrific things, and they followed them for decades. And between 60 and 80% of all of the people that they followed could pinpoint and say that there was something about their life, there were major things in their lives that were better because they were able to process traumatic events in their lives. And then, reframing those events, because we can all, like, every single person has been through something traumatic, whether they want to believe it or not. Every single person that is living on the planet today, right now, over the age of 5, can pinpoint something traumatic. If you want to be honest with yourself, there are a lot of people that want to say, yeah, everything's fine. It's like, no, that's not true. Because just, let's say in the last, 40 years, 9/11, COVID in the last 3 years. It's a traumatic experience. We are affected by all those moments, but we get to choose if we're going to register those moments as positive or negative. And that's the beauty of reframing. You can look at the moment and you can go, okay, be honest with yourself. This isn't about this isn't about toxic positivity. This is about, I'm owning, I went through something. And yes, this thing was devastating to me. What did I learn from it? How did I grow from it? What do I know more about myself now that I did not know before I experienced this moment? And it's such a powerful tool to reframe so that you're not just looking at the negatives of, any particular experience. It's a choice. Reframing is a choice. A lot of people can choose to go, oh, nothing ever goes my way, and this is horrible, and that's horrible. I must be cursed. That's a way. You can think that way. You're absolutely allowed to think that way. But what good is that going to do for you? You could also go, okay, I went through these horrible things. You know what? I wouldn't have met that person, and I wouldn't have learned that skill, and I wouldn't be stronger. I am more resilient now than I've ever been. The confidence that comes from getting through tough moments is such a beautiful thing, which is why I think it's so sad when you come across like helicopter parents that do everything for their child and they don't realize the ripple effect of that. I've got a group of 20 something clients that have zero confidence in themselves whatsoever because their parents thought that if I shield my child from everything negative, their life is going to be better, without realizing that if you experience adversity and then you get through it and you learn how to problem solve, the confidence that comes from that, like, hey, I went through something horrible. Key is I went through it. And what else can I, learn from, grow from, be stronger because of? It's so interconnected. It's so connected that there are certain things that you have to go through because it's going to help you realize that there's so many other things that are going to happen in life that you can't control. And guess what? You've survived all these previous things. You'll probably survive this too. There's a big chance you'll survive the next thing too.
Wow, Melody, I love your mindset on all of this. I think you have so much value, probably more than you can bring to us in an hour. But I really enjoy talking with you because I think that what you're saying resonates with me, and I think it resonates with a lot of people. And just being able to look at things a little bit differently, and I think that is the power of being able to go get therapy or work with a therapist or just work with someone that's able to kind of reframe the way that you think. And that's what you do, correct?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that, therapy, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a therapist myself, and I was in therapist for years before I became a therapist. But, therapy isn't accessible to everybody. It isn't affordable to everybody. But just having a crew of people around you that are trustworthy, healing minded people can do the same, they can form the same function for you that a therapist could do. So, I think that's a really important thing to know too, is that you can have access to healing, positive, strong, honest people that can give you what you need and can help you grow. But you just have to be honest with yourself and really pay attention to who are the people that are around you. Who's healthy around you, who's living a life that you find admirable and honorable, and then reach out to those people, humble yourself and say, how did you decide to do this? How did you get through that? And know that they've been through some crap. How did they get through it? how
Mhm.
how do you do it? Become a student. You don't have to have everything figured out. Become a student and allow yourself to ask a ton of questions so that you can evolve and you can grow and you have support around you that has the exact same mindset.
Mhm. And a question I think some people will be asking is, well, how do I get around those people? If especially if their sphere of influence is very negative. And I don't know what you think of this, but I personally am under the belief that we attract what we put into the world. So if you want to attract more healthy people, it requires you taking the first step in getting healthy. Um, and it's a domino effect, but eventually
Mhm.
it starts, you build momentum, and then you're surrounded by people that are non-toxic, and they want what's best for you, and they're going to speak life into you, and they're going to do all these things. So do you have other ideas as far as if someone were to ask you, how would I get around these kinds of people?
I feel like taking the salesman approach is something that people could adopt, which is cold calling. Send an email, send a direct message. Whenever you realize that there's somebody that is doing something admirable to you, send them a message, reach out to them and be honest. You don't have to think that, okay, I want to reach out to Oprah. I need to be like Oprah. No, Oprah knows there are a lot of people who aren't like Oprah, and Oprah's a human being. Oprah's fallible too. But all those people that you admire, reach out to them, whether they're big names or they're people that are in your community. Be honest. You don't have to be at whatever level you think that they're at. It's unfair for you to put yourself in that position. Just know that everyone who is at a certain level, they started out where you are and they grew, they evolved, they reached out to people and they got support. Don't hesitate to say, hey, I'm trying to figure out, how do I grow and how do I heal? I love the way your life looks. Can we connect? Will you be my mentor? Can we talk every now and then? Now, don't approach this by being a user. Don't approach this, these situations, just go, okay, I'm going to take as much as I can from this person and run. No. What can you offer to someone, whether it's
Mhm.
time or, can you promote what it is that they're doing? But know that it's important for you then to share whatever you learn, share what you learn so that people coming from behind you can grow as well. Don't just be a taker. Whatever you learn, share it. Whatever book that you read, whatever quote or affirmation that you got something from, share it. Share that positivity with people that are around you. Some people are going to take it and appreciate it and run with it, and some people aren't going to care. That's okay. And you'll realize who's open and who's not. You
Mhm.
don't have to beat people over the head with the things that you find important. Those are important moments to have so you can realize who's growth minded and who isn't. Where do you put your energy and where do you not put your energy? These are really eye-opening moments that you're going to have, but they're necessary moments to have so you can figure out who deserves your time and energy and who doesn't,
Mhm.
and reach out to those people that are living the way that you want to live. Are you, is losing weight a priority for you? Are you going to reach out to somebody that's obese to get health tips? No. You're going to reach out to somebody that goes to the gym even when they hate it. You're going to reach out to someone who's eating a certain way. They're not loving it, but they do it because they can see the bigger picture. If you want to become more financially stable, are you going to reach out to the person that goes to the mall every weekend? No. Reach out to people that are living in a way that you admire and ask them, how do you do this? What are your habits? How do you figure this whole thing out? How do you think of the bigger picture and not just instant gratification?
Mhm.
Reach out to people who are living in a way that you want to live. Are you going to get a bunch of relationship advice from someone who's perpetually single or always in dysfunctional relationships? No. So you have to be careful about who's feeding into you. You have to edit people out of your life if you realize that they're not living functional, healthy, positive lives. I have a girlfriend. I love her to death. She's one of my best friends. She has a history of really crappy relationships and loves doling out relationship advice. I turn my ears off. We can talk about meditation because you love to meditate and I admire your meditation practice, but your relationship advice falls on deaf ears over here. It just is what it is. So you have to be really discerning about what your diet looks like. And that diet is the people that are around you. It's the music you listen to. It's the movies and the TV shows that you watch. What you feed yourself, it grows within you. You just have to hope and pray and make it an intention that you're feeding yourself positive and healthy stuff from positive and healthy people.
I love that. That is so good. And my next question was going to be, do you have any takeaway, final thoughts or takeaways for us? I feel like that is, you just drop the mic on us.
The overall thing with me is you got to be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. Grow up. A lot of people will, they will act like they're 5 and 6 years old still, and they want to put flowers on top of everything, and they want to lean into the potential of a situation or the hope that, something is going to be something that there's no way it's going to be. You've got to look at the evidence. When you're trying to evaluate relationships, look at the history of your relationship with a person so far. If this person has historically disappointed you, why are you going to assume that all of a sudden a light bulb has gone off and they're all of a sudden going to grow up? Stop. It's time for you to grow up.
Right.
Stop. So you've got to be honest. That's my main lesson for everybody, is to just be really, really honest about the people around you and the situations that you're in order for you to shift into problem solving mode so you can make the best decisions for you based on reality, not delusion.
So good. So Melody, tell my audience where they can find you and where they can find your book if they want to get into your community and your sphere of influence, where they would go to maybe take that first step, which would be probably the book, would you say? Or
yeah, sure. That's a big one. The first book is Mourning the Living, When the Loved One You've Lost is Still Here. It's available on my website, and you can find everything on my website. I've got classes on the website. I've got products on the website. The website is Melody, LMFT.com. And LMFT stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. So you can find me at Melody LMFT, also on Instagram, also on Facebook, and that's the web address as well. And so I've got a newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter that I send out when I get off my ass and get that going. But and you could just look Melody Murray and you could just Google Melody Murray and you'll be able to find me.
I love it. So if anything that she has said here today that Melody has said has resonated, then, by all means, get into her, get connected to her. I'm sure she has a lot of amazing content and a lot of amazing advice, I will say, just from sharing here on the show. So Melody, I thank you so much for spending the time with us today and just sharing your story, sharing your expertise, and offering such practical advice. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.